Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of August 31st to September 6th, 2025, where I take a look at a couple of stories that caught my attention and give you my thoughts and my opinion. And there are three stories I want to cover for this week, and those are the 30-minute state of play that took a deep dive into 007 First Light, the upcoming James Bond game by IR Interactive. Capcom making some very interesting comments ranging from the PS5, the Switch 2, and the status in terms of sales of Monster Hunter Wilds and all. And a very odd situation surrounding Star Wars Outlaw, which first got reports coming out about claims the game wasn't look great, but then a situation really blew up in terms of when footage of the game started to come out and all. So if you're interested in where I got the source of these information, links will be in the description of this video, and of course timestamps will also be in the description as well if there are certain parts of this video you wish to skip to, again assuming you're watching this either on YouTube or Patreon. But before we get started, I like to do what I like to call the quick My 2 Cents, stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details. The first one has to do with the Nintendo 64 app recently for the Switch 2 and all, or for, Nintendo Switch Online in general, recently got a brand new game added to the list though, and that is Forsaken 64. I remember seeing ads for this back when I was in high school. I mean, there was called The Future is Forsaken and everything. I never got a chance to rent it or anything like that, so it's probably something I'll try on the N64 app at some point down the road. But some are pointing out that this leads to sort of a rumor about so-called leak on certain games coming to the N64 app. Forsaken 64 was one of them, and others were pointing to Donkey Kong 64, which my personal opinion is that I think they should have released, if that was true, I think they should have released that alongside of when Donkey Kong Bonanza recently, came out back, I believe in August and all. They should have basically, if that was the case and all. But in either case though, Forsaken 64 is available on the N64 app for those who have the Nintendo Switch Online and all. We also learned that supposedly Nate the Hate has chimed in on basically rumors about a Nintendo Direct, and at least according to him, or at least according to others, they are hearing that we should be seeing a Direct next week, or at least in the middle of September, as that's the claim going around. No word on whether or not it's going to happen before, the Mario 40th anniversary of the Mario series, or if we're getting a Mario anniversary Direct or anything like that. So remains to be seen, but others are chiming in. Again, Nate the Hate, again, like anything, should be taken with a grain of salt, but he has gotten a lot of things right lately, so I won't rule this one out entirely though. But if the Direct is happening, like every single situation like this, I'm going to keep my expectations in check. I'm hoping if it does happen, I'm hoping this Direct is good, but time will ultimately tell if that is the case. The next thing is basically we are learning that the Steam and eShops and other digital stores are having trouble with the recent release of Hollow Knight Silksong that just recently came out after years of waiting. And I mean, if that is the case, then it seems that a lot of people really want to try this game out, regardless of what your platform of choice is. Now, there are claims that some folks have already were able to purchase the game or able to download it, if they have Game Pass or anything like that, and others are having issues, but hopefully that issue can be addressed. Plus, we're also hearing now the game seems to be blowing up in the Steam charts right now, seems to be doing very well, which I'm sure the developers, Team Cherry, are pretty happy about that though. And of course, a lot of developers, the price point for Hollow Knight Silksong is having a lot of developers rethink their pricing and all, as it's been reported, at least according to Nintendo Life, seems to indicate that the game is now at the price of $20 here in the US though, but some developers told Eurogamer that the price point is too low and could reflect badly on their games, which are set to be slightly more. They also point out that the article is Team Cherry has a core team members of has team members of 4, while others, like AAA studios have over 1,000 of employees and all. But I mean, if the game's getting good response and it's at that price point, then maybe some of these developers may need to rethink their prices in the first place, especially when we've seen, while not all AAA games, but we've seen cases where a lot of AAA games are costing $70, but are basically either, we have to either become beta testers or basically the whole ship it, broke it now, or patch it later and everything. So, I mean, if this game takes off and everything like that, it's going to fly into the face. I could see this flying into the face of a lot of developers. Plus, I could see Hollow Knight Silksong to some degree be basically become. I could see it definitely entering the Game of the Year nomination and all. I think it does have that potential. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen. But I could see something like that, along with Claire Expedition 33 and Donkey Kong Bonanza, both kind of enter in that category and all. So we'll see what happens, especially with the Game Awards. But right now, it does seem like Hollow Knight Silksong is certainly having some impact and all. We also learned that Kojima Production will be hosting a 10th anniversary show, and they will be talking about their games ranging from OD, that supposedly horror game being worked on between them and Microsoft, and another one called Psynt, Physint, that supposedly we'll hear information about that. It's Kojima's own Metal Gear, not the Metal Gear that's currently owned by Konami and everything. So we'll have to wait and see what this whole thing is about, though. I am curious to see what Kojima Production has to show and everything like that. Although the one called Psynt, or Physint, I hear that it's basically a PS6 title, though, which means that could be years away or something like that. So I thought it was a little inappropriate when they made that announcement during one of the State of Plays and everything like that. So, but time will ultimately tell about in terms of what, if anything about that is being shown. But we're interested to see what this 10th anniversary show that Kojima Production is working on. We also learned that supposedly Gears of War Reloaded, which also launched on the PS5, has basically passed 1 million players in under a week, though. Regardless of how you feel about Microsoft's third-party strategy, it seems to be paying off for them, and they seem to be doing very good and everything like that. So obviously this is working for Microsoft. Again, some folks agree with this, some folks disagree, but whatever the case is, it seems to be working for them just fine. We learned that one of the executive producers that worked at Rare with Everwild, despite being canceled, has been hired as executive producer for Microsoft and all. We have seen some studios former employees at Rare kind of move around a little bit and everything like that. And Rare, I think, has been in some odd place and everything. I mean, Sea of Thieves seems to be doing very well for them. Obviously, they must be happy with that. But outside of that, though, I just don't see them having done anything else. And the recent Perfect Dark game got canceled despite Microsoft making claims about it, which, again, a lot of the backlash on that game falls directly on Microsoft for lots of reasons and everything. So just a very odd situation indeed and all. But still, it does seem that some employees have been moved around and everything like that. And last but not least, though, we are getting rumors about, and this one will probably tie into my part 2 of this My 2 Cent video, is that the upcoming Resident Evil game, Requiem, or the new Resident Evil game that's being in the works, could be heading to the Switch 2. This has to do with a comment made by Duscom, who's known to leak a lot of Capcom information and everything out there. Again, it is worth taking with a grain of salt about this information, as there's been no confirmation from Capcom at this time. But based off of recent comments, which I'll get to part 2 on this, as I mentioned before, of what Capcom's been saying, it does seem like they're opening the door to the possibility of this game coming to the Switch 2. Whether it will come later or come around the same time the other versions comes out remains to be seen. But if this new Resident Evil game is coming to the Switch 2, I wouldn't be surprised if we have to wait a little while before it comes out. it's sort of a situation with Borderlands 4, which supposedly is coming out, I believe, like a month or so after, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and PC version, indeed and all. And of course, and in our movie and TV show, part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we saw a new trailer for the upcoming Disney Plus Marvel Zombies. Obviously, based on what they showed so far, it looked like they had some folks from some of the folks from Thunderbolt to some folks from Black Panther fighting, the different Marvel zombies and everything. It looks kind of impressive and everything. Definitely, I can see that being more on the TVMA side. It is one I'll be keeping an eye out. The art style does look like something that's part of, Marvel's What If series and all. So I'll definitely be checking that one out. We also learned that Paramount and Skydance is announcing that they are working on a Call of Duty movie and possibly a TV show with it, though. This one, we'll see how this one plays out. This could be sort of a hit and miss, and we have seen TV shows and movies based off of video games. Some have found success, some have gotten mixed bags, and others have flopped really badly. So this one can go either way. So time will ultimately tell how this one plays out. And then again, I mean, Paramount has had some successes, some mixed bags. Halo obviously was a mixed bag for a lot of folks. Some liked it, some didn't. First season I was very mixed on. Second season I thought was better, but still mixed. Meanwhile, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie and the Knuckles TV show seem to have fared better and has done very well with audiences indeed. So we'll see about this. We also learned that supposedly everyone who's been trying to figure out if Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon or not, apparently one of the cast members that played Quake in the TV show basically chimed in, and based on her comments, the answer is no, it's not canon and everything like that, though. So there are some who have been hoping to get the answer once and for all. So obviously this is from one actress that was on the show and everything like that. Now, others have not said anything. We haven't heard anything from... I don't know if we've heard anything from Kevin Feige and all, but apparently, according to this actress, though, the answer is basically no. Marvel's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not tied to the MCU and all. And that might be true, considering at the time it was handled by Marvel Television, not Marvel Studios. There was a whole issue with Ike Perlmutter and Kevin Feige at one point, though, until eventually Marvel Studios started to take over in terms of TV shows and everything. So it is possible it may not be canon, not be part of the MCU at all, though, but it is from one actress, so we'll have to wait and see if others chime in as well. We also learned that DC Studios' Superman, the sequel to Superman, is supposedly being referred to as Man of Tomorrow, and it's aiming for a summer 2027 release. Basically, we know that James Gunn is working on the sequel. We know that basically Superman did very well at the box office, supposedly crossed into the 600 million. So it wouldn't be surprised that they're working on a sequel. What the sequel is going to be remains to be seen. We don't know if it does, based on a tweet or a comment made by James Gunn. It is possible. It does show Lex Luthor in sort of like a mecha outfit with Superman, so it's possible Lex Luthor could still play a role, but who knows? Maybe other villains can chime in as well. Maybe we'll see Brainiac or something. Maybe they'll figure out maybe bring General Zod in. So there's that possibility, or even another take on Darkseid and all. So we'll have to wait and see. But obviously, we know the sequel is coming, and supposedly it's being called Man of Tomorrow. And last but not least, we learned that Mortal Kombat 2, which was supposed to come out this year, has now been pushed back to summer of 2026. I don't know what the reason may be behind this and everything like that. Maybe the teaser trailer didn't sit very well. For whatever reason, it seems to be pushed back to summer 2026 indeed, even though supposedly the movie is done and all. This is WB, and there have been making there are sometimes they do make some questionable decisions lately, though. So there has been some like you have to wondering, why did they make this decision, this or that? So it's sort of an odd situation, indeed. But in either case, it's being pushed back to a summer 2026, though. Okay, with the Quick My 2 Cent part now done, along with our movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with Star Wars Outlaw, particularly with the Nintendo Switch 2, which led to a very odd situation this week. Now, so far we've seen a lot of games appear at certain events ranging from PAX to Gamescom, and there have been several impression reports that have come out. But some of these impressions have raised questions about the frame rate in terms of how the game looks and everything. One example was Elden Ring, when it was reported that despite that they could not record any footage, and some of the claims that the game ran like at below 30, probably in 20 frames per second and all. Although supposedly footage did get out, and there's been some claim that may not be as bad as some people claim it was. However, the big one this week that really kind of blew up on the internet and really kind of put into an odd situation, and even had one YouTube channel apologize, was Star Wars Outlaw. This was a game that was announced during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct as one of the games coming to the Switch 2. Now, when that footage was originally shown and everything, there were questions about the frame rate and everything, and there were some people worried about that game, particularly since that game was, using ray tracing and all, and so forth. There was also questions about the gameplay, although supposedly Ubisoft overhauled the gameplay on that one as well. But what was interesting was a report that originally came out from GVG, or what's it called? Yeah, GVG YouTube channel that went hands-on with it, and their claim was that the game ran really poorly on the Switch 2 and all. They stated that the game basically dropped below 30 frames per second, suggesting that some parts of the game ran at 40 to 45 FPS, which seemed odd considering and everything like that. That was their claim. Eventually, they had to do an apology video. But following information that came out about the game impressions not being good, reports started to come out that footage began to leak and everything like that. And this is when the whole situation started to change. An article from Nintendo Life originally reported on, basically saying how initial impressions suggest that Star Wars Outlaw on Switch 2 is having issues. But according to them, they had two updates. One that said, quote, "As readers pointed out, videos claimed to show dock Switch 2 gameplay are also online, which suggests the dock performance may be better than described in the previews above. The uploader claimed that they managed to get early footage after a local retailer had their copy out early, clearly by mistake." And then basically they did a follow-up update saying that they tried the game out for a spin, and supposedly they came away very impressed with it. GVG Game has uploaded a new video. It's supposedly them apologizing, as I mentioned earlier. And judging from this new footage that came out, though, I will say, at least based on what they showed so far, it doesn't look that bad. I mean, obviously, it may not be as shiny as, say, like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X and S, or even maybe the PC for that matter, but the footage they at least seem to have shown based on what came out seem to indicate, though, that the game may not be as awful as some have basically claimed it was. This has led to some folks criticizing a lot of these game journalists and publishers, including GVG, which, as I mentioned the third time around, had to do an apology video. But it has raised questions about a couple of things, though. One has been, to be exact, though, and I do kind of agree with this, is like basically raising questions about some of their legitimacy in terms of their claims when this footage has came out and everything. Others have sort of pointed out to why either Ubisoft or Nintendo didn't allow us to show some actual footage. So this has created a whole lot of situations indeed, and it's just a weird situation at all, though, and it's going to throw into questions about future coverage of games on the Switch 2 and all, about basically, is their criticism valid? Is it true what they're saying or not? Considering this whole situation with Star Wars Outlaw really has I'd say, just like I said, throw in the questions of some of these comments made by these influencers, game journalists, YouTubers, indeed. So it's a very odd situation with some of the reports about how some people thought Star Wars Outlaw ran poorly on the Switch 2 to now claims that may not be the case. And it's going to kind of throw into questions other games that could be coming to the Switch 2 as well. So just an odd situation indeed. And when you go to some of the comments made on the videos about Star Wars Outlaw on Switch 2, some of the impressions seem to be pointing to, this looks fine. I mean, it's not perfect, but it looks good and everything. So, but whether or not you think the game is good or not remains to be seen. There are some who like the update, others don't. So time will ultimately tell. I might try the game out myself, but it's a very odd situation indeed that's surrounding Star Wars Outlaw on the Switch 2. So overall, clearly it definitely puts game journalists in sort of a tough spot and raises questions about some of their impression when they're claiming the game is bad, but when you have this leaked footage come out, it contradicts a lot of their claims indeed. So I do think it could put some of these folks who go to these events and everything throw into question whether their impressions were legitimate or not. And not to mention, I still wonder why they didn't show any footage of this game and everything. So, but clearly it's also an indication that they're reading off of a preview build and everything, not the final build and everything like that. So still, just an odd case with Star Wars Outlawed on the Switch 2 and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with comments made by Capcom recently in regards to the PS5, Monster Hunter Wilds, and even Switch 2 and all. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video. And for this one, we're going to be talking about Capcom and some interesting comments they have said recently, though. Now, one of the things with Capcom, though, is that they've been on a roll lately, though. They've certainly put out a lot of games that have hit very well with a lot of folks, bringing from the Monster Hunter series to Resident Evil, doing very well indeed, though, to even basically, Street Fighter 6 and all. But recently, the president of Capcom sort of weighed in on some comments regarding both the PS5 and the Switch 2 itself, and supposedly his claim about basically the negative impact that the high price of the PS5 had on the recently released Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, it doesn't sound like the game flopped in anything, but it may have not met the expectation Capcom was supposedly hoping for, at least based on what I've read from this interview. Now, this comes from WCCF Tech, and this is what they have to say. Quote, sales of Monster Hunter Wilds has been impacted by the high price of PS5 and not by any issue the game may have, according to Capcom's president. As reported by Automation, if I'm saying it correctly, the president of Capcom talked with Nikkei Gaming about the sales of the latest entry in one of the most popular gaming franchises ever, which was quite strong at launch, but fell off quickly in the following months, saying that the high price of the PS5, which the publisher considered the main platform of the game, has impacted its performance on the market. Taking into consideration the price of systems, accessories, and a PlayStation Plus subscription required to play online, plus the price of the game, getting to play Monster Hunter Wilds could be costly, especially for younger players with no income. So it would make more sense for some of them to get previous entries in the series, featuring a lot more content like Monster Hunter Wilds, Monster Hunter Rise, which could be purchased for far less. As such, the biggest challenge for the publisher will be making games as accessible as possible to new players, and it's planning a strategy to take advantage of future discounts to improve sales starting in these final months of the year. According to Another part that's thrown out is in the same interview, the Capcom president also commented on Nintendo Switch 2, saying the system's success was better than the publisher expected, highlighting its lower price compared to Sony's system. The success of the new Nintendo console reaffirms how cost-conscious users are all over the world, the president commented. Now, I don't think this comment, as I mentioned before, seemed to indicate that Monster Hunter Wilds has flopped or anything like that, but I do think, as I said before, it does seem to sound like that maybe just having it on the PS5 itself, maybe it's also having some issues because of the cost of the system and everything like that. We've seen some places where the price has gone up to a certain degree and everything. Although it is worth pointing out, I believe this is also on Xbox Series X and S as well, though. And so obviously it does seem to indicate that the publisher will be making some adjustments going forward here and there to make the games more accessible going forward and all. So again, I don't think this is an indication the game flopped and all. But what I did find interesting was their comment about the Switch 2. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of how some publishers out there and developers were caught off guard on the success of the Switch 1. And it almost sounds like, in this case though, it does seem to indicate that maybe it's possible that Monster Hunter Wilds could come to the Switch 2 and all. And while that is a possibility, at the same time, I've heard somewhere how some people felt like the game struggled even on PC. So, and then again, we've seen some claims of how some games have struggled on the Switch 2, but that may not be the case, as I mentioned with Star Wars Outlaw. So it's possible we could get Monster Hunter Wild on the Switch 2, or it's a possibility they could take the approach like we saw with the Switch 1, where we did get Monster Hunter Rise first, before it went to other systems as well. Same with Monster Hunter Stories. We know we're getting a third entry on that one too. But this comment also, again, feels like Capcom may be rethinking and maybe putting some effort into the Switch 2 to a certain degree, which henceforth why we're hearing rumors about the next Resident Evil game could be making its way to the Switch 2 and all. So very interesting comments from the president of Capcom, indeed or not. We'll see what this means going forward though. But despite that, it does seem Capcom seems to be in a very good position though. So like I said, I'm not sure Monster Hunter Wilds flopped, but clearly it does sound like they're rethinking some of their approach, which kind of sounds similar to what we saw with Square Enix following the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which, at least according to some claims, the game didn't perform as well as they had hoped for, which kind of put them into position to be more open to a multi-platform release than they were in the past and everything like that. We know we're getting Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade coming to the Switch 2 and everything like that. So it's possible that might be the kind of situation we're kind of seeing similar with Capcom indeed. So overall though, very interesting comments made by the Capcom president though. I don't see them abandoning the PS5, but they may rethink some of their approach to a certain degree, given how they point out how the price of the system, accessories, and the PlayStation Plus subscription though. At the same time, their comments about the Switch 2, to me, does seem to indicate sort of a Square Enix situation where they may be more open to supporting the Switch 2 more than they have before in the past. Currently, right now, or like the Nintendo system, or like, the Switch 1 in the past to a certain degree. Currently, right now, only games available from Capcom on Switch 2 are Street Fighter 6 and Goddess of the Past. So we'll have to wait and see, but it does sound like we might see more of their games appear on the Switch 2 to a certain degree. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our third and final part, and this one is I want to give my thoughts on the state of play that happened this week in terms of 30 minutes of looking at the next James Bond game, 007 First Light. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our third and final part of our My Two Cent video, and for this one, I want to give my thoughts on the about supposedly around 30-minute video based off of the Sony State of Play on the first look at 007 First Light. Now, James Bond games, there have been some out there. I won't say there have been a whole bunch, but there has been some out there. Some are forgettable, but there are some that remain to be a classic though. One of the most recognizable one that I could think of is GoldenEye, originally released in 1997 for the Nintendo 64. It was one of the games that kind of revolutionized first-person shooters back then. I mean, by today's standard, the game, well, let's just say it hasn't aged great, but it still has its place in gaming history nevertheless. The game also got somewhat of a remake in 2010 with GoldenEye handled by, I think it was Eurocon, the studio that handled it back then for the Wii, then ported over to the Xbox 360 and the PS3 and all. So that GoldenEye is probably the one I remember as one of the most famous James Bond video games. But there have been some others here and there, even some done by EA though, and I mean and so forth and all. But hearing IO Interactive handling a James Bond game, the same developers that are known for the Hitman series, is sort of interesting indeed. And when the first trailer, a CGI trailer came out though, I thought this could work and everything. I never played a Hitman game before, but there are those who do enjoy that game nevertheless though. And when I heard that Sony was doing a state of play on it, focusing on just this one game and all, I figured I would give it a shot and take a look at it. And I will say, based on what they showed off at this state of play, I am impressed with it. I am, but I also have some concerns at the same time. So I'm going to break it down into what I like and what I didn't like, mixed, not 100% sure about. What I do like the fact that is the game is, as far as what I like though, I do like the fact that this is definitely more into, looks like the developers really did a good job digging into and utilizing the James Bond character. I like the fact that they had different ways to approach a situation, for example, there was one case where you had to follow a bellhop and went into sort of a place and the guard stopped you and you had to show an ID. Obviously, they gave you different choices, different options. Obviously, the person who picked, and again, some may argue this is a vertical slice, and that probably is true and all, but it definitely showed that they were looking at a different approach, and some of this was distracting the enemies, ranging from using some of the environments, such as turning on a hose to attract one of the workers, to taking out a worker with the darts and all, to burning, picking up a lighter to burn some of the bushes and everything to attract a guest and all, so they don't see you, which looks like you snuck into basically the building and all, bypassing security. So it does look like they give you they give you different ways to approach the situation, even with using your gadgets and all. And that's going to be the next thing I'm going to talk about. Is I like the fact that as far as the gadgets go, they have more use than, let's say, some of the past Bond games out there, to be exact though. One of it has the use of the wristwatch that you can use to scan the area for enemies, to even using some decoys here and there. One situation showed you could take out an enemy, but it could attract another enemy that sees you, while the same situation they had, you could play a decoy that could be enough to take out that one enemy, and then you could lock the other enemy behind you so they don't get out and everything like that, to another case where you could cause a distraction with some sort of explosion, or use something like a smoke grenade to take out each enemy here and there so they don't see you and all. So I do like the tie-in with a lot of the gadgets indeed and all. Indeed, which also ties into how you want to approach the situation here and there. And then finally, we had the gunplay though, and we saw a little bit of the car chasing and everything, but the gunplay is also the other area I wanted to see. And once the scene popped up with said "License to Kill," that's when you started to see the gunplay. And basically, the gunplay looks very similar to a third-person shooter and everything. You can duck behind certain situations. You can attack explosive barrels that could cause good amount of destructions and take out multiple enemies and everything like that. So it definitely sort of ties into a lot of some of the things you may remember from a lot of the James Bond movies out there, here and there. So definitely thought the gunplay looked really neat, even ranging from using like the gun as like a melee weapon and all. So really interesting indeed in terms of some of the gameplay mechanics they are using in 007 First Light. As far as what I didn't like or mixed or not 100% sure about, I will say there are some concerns with the frame rate. As some have pointed out how you saw a lot of the explosions and everything, and I can understand some of the concerns there though. I mean, when doing the stealth approach and everything like that, I didn't see really any issues with the frame rate at all. The explosions I kind of can understand to some degree given the amount of destructions out there. So frame rate can be somewhat of a concern, especially since we know this game's coming to the Switch 2, and we know that, and the fact that we know it's going to be a game key card and all. So there's some concerns with maybe the Switch 2 version, although it is worth pointing out this is focused on what we're going to see on the PS5 and the PS5 Pro and all, but I can understand some of the concerns with the frame rate. Overall, I would say I am definitely impressed with what I've seen so far, though. It'll be very interesting to see what happens when this game comes out, how IO Interactive delivers on their take on a James Bond game and everything like that. At its best, I think the gunplay looks great. I think the gameplay looks good. I like the use of the gadgets in this video that they showed, and I definitely like the fact that there were different ways to approach the situation. I think that's great. But at its worst, though, I do think there is some concerns about the frame rate. I'm hoping that IO Interactive will address that and everything before, the game comes out, though, which will be next year and all. But I will admit I have some concerns about it, but this game is definitely on my radar and one I will certainly be keeping an eye out for. I'm also hoping, I know this one was focused squarely on the PS5 and PS5 Pro and everything, but I am hoping at least IO Interactive also shows up some footage of how the game is going to run on the Switch 2 and everything like that. We know they released a Hitman game, but although supposedly they had to release some patches to fix the Switch 2 version though, so I'm hoping lessons were learned about that and that hopefully the Switch 2 version can get out the gate as smooth as they possibly can, but I'm also hoping we'll see some footage of the Switch 2 version soon as well. I'm very curious to see how that game is going to look and run on the Nintendo Switch 2. But I will say, based on first impressions that we've seen so far with the video, I would say it looks promising, and it's certainly one I will certainly be keeping an eye out for. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the situation surrounding the Switch 2 version of Star Wars Outlaw? Do you think some publishers kind of jumped the gun when they were making claims that there were issues with the game? And do you think they kind of contradicted themselves in a way? Or do you think they were spot on despite some of the footage that was leaked out? And given the footage that was leaked out, do you think Star Wars Outlaw 2 runs fine on the Switch 2? Or do you think based off the footage you may have seen, you don't think it ran well at all? What are your thoughts about the comment made about Capcom regarding Monster Hunter Wilds, PS5, and Switch 2? Do you think that Capcom may be rethinking their approach in terms of putting their games on the PS5 going forward? Do you think their comments regarding the Switch 2 indicates the possibility that Monster Hunter Wilds could be making its way over to Switch 2, or that they could be putting more games on the Switch 2, including the rumors of the next Resident Evil game coming there as well? And what are your thoughts about 007 First Light, the video that was shown, gameplay footage that was shown during Sony's State of Play? Are you looking forward to picking this game up when it comes out, though? Do you think what they showed seemed promising in any way? Are you sold on the game? Are you not sold? And if so, are you looking at picking up the PS5 version or the Xbox Series X and S or the PC version? Or are you looking to see how the Switch 2 version is going to look and play? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to. And feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me, Patreon, or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you watch this on YouTube or Patreon. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye.